to me, it raises the question of like, what do they have to hide? Why would you even do this? In fact, why not just blow the doors open and say, you know what? You want to know what we're doing with our Department of War? Here it is. I'm gonna go really hard now, one reporter said to The Guardian, and try to prove that we can do our jobs without being there. I actually think that this almost feels like a dare now to reporters who are now gonna be like, okay, you clearly have something to hide. What's going on? Welcome to Power Lines, presented this week by Beehive. I'm John Passantino.
And I'm Oliver Darcy.
Today we're discussing NBC slashing 150 staffers, gutting their diversity reporting teams. Joe Rogan and the Manosphere podcasters are slamming Donald Trump's ICE raids. But first, Pentagon reporters have turned in their badges and walked out of the building after refusing to sign Pete Hegseth's outrageous pledge. Oliver, this has been really an incredible week, especially for these reporters who work at the Pentagon. For decades now, reporters have been stationed inside the building, covering and providing accountability on what the Defense Department is doing. If you've ever turned on cable news, you've oftentimes seen reporters live from inside the building. They've got the Pentagon logo behind them over their shoulder. This has been, a tradition that we've seen on television, but also in newspapers and wires. They're in the building. They can quickly talk to key DoD staff. Pete Hegseth now wants to call it the Department of War. It seems like most news organizations are effectively ignoring that, save for Fox News. But a really big flashpoint this week after Hegseth decided that they wanted every reporter who works in the building to sign on and agree to a new set of rules that basically makes it impossible to report from there, other than taking a direct approved handout, something that, no journalist could ever sign. So every news organization, including Fox News and Newsmax, conservative outlets, walked out the door. So as of today, there are no longer correspondents working inside the building, as I understand, which means reporters are now going to have to do their work from outside the building. What do you make of this?
Well, I think we should be clear too. Pete Hegseth, yes, he has exiled the reporters, but what he's doing is depriving the public of the ability to understand what's going on at the Pentagon, which is obviously one of the most powerful institutions in the world. It's where a lot of tax dollars go. And Pete Hegseth does not want the public seemingly to know what he's really doing there. And so he's kicked out the reporters who would bring that news and information to the public. And of course, as we've talked about, it's just so hypocritical that this administration, which ran on legalizing free speech, not being emotional snowflakes, that they are the ones now who are trying to chill free speech, trying to control the narrative, not allowing people to say certain things, and retaliating against them for doing so with the full force of the federal government. And this is just, I think, the latest example of that.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. I mean, come on, let's be honest. If Kamala Harris was the president and she kicked out all of the press for refusing to agree to only effectively report what she wants, everybody would be up in arms, especially those on the right.
Especially Fox News, which, as far as I can tell, hasn't really even covered this Pentagon story, short of a pretty mild Bret Baier segment this week. Fox News has been pretty MIA on the story.
Yeah, they sure have, which is interesting considering they're one of the news organizations that have a reporter in the building who refused to sign and walked out.
Right. Fox News joined the pool, the TV pool, releasing a statement, signing on to a statement that all the television networks did. They did not release their own individual statement, though. Like basically every other news organization saying they're not signing on to the rules. But, while they are, I think, in the background, and if you watch MSNBC, I think you know very well that Fox News did not sign on to these rules. If you watch CNN, you know that Fox News did not sign on to the rules. I'm not really sure that the Fox News viewers know that their own outlet didn't sign on to the rules, because they've been quite mute on this topic. Again, outside Bret Baier sort of condemning the Pentagon, in a very mild manner over the rules, there has been almost no coverage. It's not like Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham are voicing outrage over this. They are entirely avoiding it.
Yeah, the press association that represents all those reporters in the building called it a dark day for press freedom that raises concerns about a weakening U.S. commitment to transparency. So this is really not going over well. Trump at one time, just a week or two ago, said, this is going too far. I'm not into this. I don't know what Pete is doing over there. Trump, of course, always talks to the press. He loves to actually do that, to dunk on them and troll them and attack them. But he does talk to the press pretty regularly. But then he seems to have made a U-turn and expressed support for this whole debacle. And instead now is saying, just a few days ago, like, now I'm on board with this. I actually think Pete's doing a great job. And I think that to me, it raises the question of, like, what do they have to hide? You would only do this. You would only kick reporters out who provide transparency and scrutiny of what you're doing if you think that what you're doing behind the scenes is potentially controversial, would ignite some sort of backlash. What do they have to hide? Why would you even do this? In fact, why not just blow the doors open and say, you know what, People's House, everything, we want people to know the truth of what's actually going on. You want to know what we're doing with our Department of War? Here it is. We're super transparent. And I think, to me, that the bigger issue here is that it's really raising this question of, like, what do they have to hide? I did see some reporters immediately come out yesterday speaking to outlets, including The Guardian, saying that they now believe that this will make their jobs harder, but they're now going to try even more to prove how important it is that this coverage matters. I'm going to go really hard now, one reporter said to The Guardian, and try to prove that we can do our jobs without being there. I actually think that this almost feels like a dare now to reporters who are now going to be like, okay, you clearly have something to hide. What's going on?
I think it's going to backfire. And I also think if you're Pete Hegseth, you want the reporters in the room talking to your Pentagon spokespeople, developing a rapport with them so that when they do call you and they have a request, you might be more willing to perhaps take that call and listen to the request. Kicking them out, pissing them off, that is... I just think that's going to backfire. If I'm Pete Hegseth, I want those reporters spending as much time as possible with the Pentagon spokespeople, not alienating them from them. So that's just a simple PR mistake, I think, from Pete Hegseth here, and I think it's going to come back to bite him.
Yeah, I do too. So meanwhile, I guess up the road in New York, NBC this week cut 150 staffers, which is a pretty dramatic number. It's in the single digits in terms of percentage of staff, but a fairly big number, obviously. 150 people is certainly not small. That's bigger than some newsrooms entirely. Among them is the diversity reporting teams over there. They're the ones who reported these verticals: NBC Black, NBC Asian America, NBC Latino. And among them, staffers also, I think, on the television side and on the digital side are also included in this. But pretty notable that they're making these cuts. This is because MSNBC and CNBC are spinning off with this new Versant group that is forming as a standalone company, which means that NBC, which was the backbone of news gathering for these outlets, is no longer needed. They're really just going to continue to maintain their own NBC platforms, but MSNBC and CNBC, we're not here to help anymore, providing staff around the clock and helping verify information for your 24/7 news channels. This seems like a pretty big deal, though, and raises questions what NBC is up to and what their plans are for news. What do you make of this?
I think, the bottom line here, there's a few things, but the bottom line here is this is a symptom, another sign of the linear television business dying, right? That's why NBCU is spinning off CNBC and MSNBC and all their dying cable assets into a new company because they don't want anything to do with it anymore. And I think that NBC, NBC cutting is a direct result of that. So it's all a direct result of this business dying. And they're not going to be the only ones this year. CBS, my understanding, is going to do pretty significant layoffs probably by the end of this month over at CBS News. So they're going to get hit pretty hard. And you've seen layoffs across the industry as a result of this business model collapsing. And so that's number one. And then the second thing, too, I think about these specific layoffs, as they were looking for places to cut, it's notable that they decided to cut the DEI teams, basically, given that Donald Trump and Brennan Carr have used the force of government to go after companies that have DEI initiatives. And you know that Brennan Carr has already threatened Comcast, the parent company of NBC, and threatened them over the DEI programs that they have. And so now that NBC News has decided, as they're doing these cuts, as they need to find savings, to cut the diversity initiative reporting teams, I think is a notable thing. Perhaps it's a coincidence, but it's a hell of a coincidence if so.
Yeah, seems like some nice signaling there. One of the reporters over there told us this week that it's been very grim and somber, and another one said that the layoffs were traumatic. It does seem like a tough time to be in a network newsroom between what you said, what's coming over at CBS, what's happening at NBC, the lawsuits and the challenges that have hit ABC from the Trump administration, and what we've seen happen even with layoffs over in CNN's newsroom. It seems like NBC, or MSNBC at least, is hiring, though, now that they've spun off and they're building their own operation, but a really difficult time in general. I do wonder, though, whether or not NBC is planning to double down on its streaming outlet that they have, NBC News Now. And it will be fascinating for me, I think, to watch whether or not that becomes a fierce competitor to MSNBC, right? Now the two of them operate these live streaming platforms, or live television platforms, let's say. But they used to be friendly, and now you have them going head to head, and it's going to be interesting to watch, I think.
I agree, and we'll see which one gains the most traction. NBC News Now, they have to some extent a slight advantage in that their digital platform's up and running right now, and so their challenge there is, how do we, I think, scale this thing and get a big audience to watch it? But they have the technology, they have the infrastructure built. MSNBC is obviously a linear cable channel, and so they're going to have to work on building a streamer, I'm assuming, at some point, and getting that off the ground. And it'll be curious to know, does MSNBC join forces with CNBC on a digital play? Are they going to be approaching this separately? I think all that remains to be seen.
Yeah. All right. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk about the Manosphere podcasters who supported Donald Trump now turning their backs on him, especially in light of his ICE raids.
John, changing seasons means harsher air, drier skin, and the after effects of travel and summer sun damage catching up to you.
It's true. Your skin has different needs this time of year, and that's where OneSkin comes in.
If you haven't heard of OneSkin, they're the first skin longevity company founded by an all-woman team of PhDs in skin regeneration, tissue engineering, and stem cell biology. And their products are backed by 5 published clinical studies and over 10,000 5-star reviews.
Oliver, you've tried some of their products, right?
That's right, John. I've been using OneSkin in the morning and in the evening on my face. I use their face lotion, the OS01 face topical lotion, as well as their eye cream. And I really like it. At the very least, it leaves your skin feeling quite fresh when you leave for the day or when you're headed to bed. But apparently it's worked quite well, as our viewers continue to think that we are applying AI filters to our skin, and we are not. We are just using OneSkin.
I did see a few tweets about that again this week. It was pretty funny.
I know I've never expected to be accused of face tuning my skin, but here we are.
What's also great is that every formula is dermatologist tested, safe for sensitive skin, and NEA approved, delivering powerful results with skin health in mind.
This season, don't just moisturize, support your skin at the cellular level with OneSkin. For a limited time, you can try OneSkin with 15% off using code STATUS at oneskin.co. That's 15% off oneskin.co with code STATUS. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. Try OneSkin today. You won't regret it.
All right, we're back. So Oliver, there's been mounting criticism from podcasters in the Manosphere. That's Joe Rogan, Tim Dillon, Andrew Schulz, pushing back on Donald Trump's immigration raids, this policy that has clearly gone beyond what many of them thought they were going to be seeing out of this administration. Here's a clip from Tim Dillon.
We need the rule of law, obviously.
Oh my gosh.
Is there
Secure
is there a
border.
better way to do these ICE raids? I think Trump's losing support amongst. They did a poll recently about Latinos. Is there a better way, a more humane way to conduct some of these raids? Because I think there are a lot of people that go, we want a border, we need a country, and that certain people also need to be deported. Absolutely. But when people see children being zip tied or a grandmother being zip tied, and these are people who've maybe lived in a community 30 years and they're not committing a crime, they're here illegally, we know that. To me, you see a lot of people that are, more moderate types, people like myself that very much want a border and a country.
Right.
But I look at, showing up to a high school graduation and deporting someone's father. I go, this seems to a lot of people to be inhumane.
As a conservative and as a business owner in the construction industry and as a realist, I can say we have to do something about labor, and that needs to be a smarter plan than just rounding up every single person and deporting them just like that.
Right.
So, and I'm going to get pushback on that, but I'm just living in reality from here on out.
Yeah.
And if anybody's mad at me for saying the truth, then I'm sorry.
Sounds like a liberal. What a rhino.
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly shocking people, even those on the right. I mean, Tim Dillon bringing this up on his own, even relatively softly to somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene in an interview, means that it's clearly something on his mind. And it's clearly something that is resonating across both the left and the right? Like, we're seeing this huge backlash to these immigration raids in different parts of the country, from LA and Chicago. And of course, a lot of these raids are taking place in, what are traditionally Democratic or liberal bastions, to sort of like pour salt in the wound there, to almost make it even more difficult on everybody so they could point out the backlash from the crazy liberals. And we're trying to round up the criminals. We're just going after the bad guys. But Tim Dillon's not the only one who's been pushing back. Joe Rogan has been saying this. He said, no one with a heart is going to go along with this. And I did not ever anticipate seeing this sort of thing on TV on a regular basis. He said, I really thought they were just going to go after the criminals. I really thought there was enough gang members and enough people, MS-13, whatever, that they would just go after those guys. I mean, Joe, you are so naive. You're the absolute best.
Was he not listening to Donald Trump at all during the campaign? It's not like they were quiet about this. They've been pretty open about their plans. Anyone who pays any attention to conservative politics, to what Donald Trump's been saying, to what Stephen Miller's been saying, would have known that this was basically what they want to do, and that the cruelty would be the key aspect of it, right? That's almost the point of it. There's the famous Adam Sewer piece, I think, from The Atlantic, from the Trump 1.0, that says the cruelty is the point. And that's exactly what this administration is trying to do with these videos, by showing everyone that they are, that they're tough, supposedly, and they're arresting these people. That's the whole point.
Yeah, I mean, it also feels very performative, right? Remember the beginning of this when we saw Kristi Noem, who goes out wearing the immigration uniforms, and they have her posing, and she's full hair and makeup. She's out there on the scene.
She's still doing that.
She did that cosplaying as an agent.
She did it with Benny Johnson. Remember the other day? She took the right-wing propagandist Benny Johnson to the Walmart, and then the federal agents went into the Walmart and I think arrested a couple people. What is going? I mean, that is really, I feel like, dystopian stuff when you have federal agents raiding a Walmart like that, and then having the right-wing propagandist with the, DHS or whatever vest on. But that's the stuff that they're speaking out against. But anyone who was paying attention during the campaign would have told you that this is exactly what Donald Trump said he was going to do. He was going to be cruel to the immigrant class in this country.
Yeah, and I think that's the sort of other part of this that's so gross, is that the administration is tapping these mouthpieces like Benny Johnson for these effective ride-alongs to post this stuff online all within this construct of like, we're doing the hard work, we're out there getting the criminals off the street. It's really disgusting. And, but I do think this administration feels like it has to be accountable, like it has to feed the right-wing beast on platforms like X and others, where every day they're posting, videos, especially on the Homeland Security account on there. A lot of the stuff is like, very very dripping with like irony and meme culture. We even saw some push back on it. I think it was Theo Vaughn who pushed back on DHS using a clip of his own on their account saying, hey, I didn't approve for you to do this stuff. Please take down any videos of me talking about immigration. I want out. I want off of this whole thing. I feel very differently about it. But they're doing this because they feel like they can whip up, I imagine, younger people, but people who are on the right, who are really in tune, extremely online, and they want this stuff. They're fighting the culture wars every day online. And by posting videos of immigration raids, migrants in handcuffs coming out of these places, it just feeds the beast. And it's like this fresh red meat every day. And it feels like that's what they're doing here with Benny Johnson.
Yeah. And I think it's not almost like they are portraying these people as subhuman to some extent. With the way they talk about them, the way they just like go catch them, almost like it's like prey or something that they're going to go catch.
They did the Pokemon thing. Remember, it was catch them all, and it was like what?
The alligator Alcatraz, if you remember, where they were boasting about the inhumane conditions and the mosquitoes and the alligators and how hot it was. That they are intentionally portraying immigrants in this country as less than human. They're otherizing them in ways we've really never seen a president do up until Donald Trump. And it's frankly gross. But the thing I think that Trump should be worried about to some extent, and the Republicans, is this Manosphere podcasting, block. They're very influential, and a lot of people do turn to them for news information. And Joe Rogan and Tim Dillon and Andrew Schulz, they're basically telling their audience that this is not good. And they're giving them permission to rebel against this administration. They're not running cover for them the way that the older propagandists, the Fox News hosts are doing. And I think if the Republican Party really wants to continue to have a hold on this demographic, which, it seemed like they did to some extent in the last election, they should be worried about losing these people and people like Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's not good if you're Donald Trump and someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is really far right, is saying you're gone too far. That should be a warning sign, a red alarm for these people that they've lost the plot.
Yeah. I do think that, though, even as far as they've come with the pushback, even that they're getting from this space, that this could not happen without the creation of and the constant feeding of this far right online ecosystem of influencers and media outlets who will support this sort of thing, who will treat it with fanfare and praise. This would be for the mainstream news organizations and even just like everyday Americans. People would be looking at this and saying, this is not what we're about. We want to get immigration under control, but we have this whole space now where you go, how should I feel about this video? And the video is put in completely different context as like, this is great, we're getting these criminals out. But that language is, it's oftentimes inaccurate, but it also dehumanizes these people. And I think it sets up this scenario where the administration is just in this feedback loop where they continue to send them the videos and the memes and the dehumanizing stuff without end. And I think it is very worrying. And this administration knows that when you look at the data, they've actually are behind previous administrations, including Democratic ones like the Biden or Obama administration, in terms of the actual deportations. So they're going for this really low-hanging fruit, going into a Walmart. What are we grabbing, like clerks? Are we grabbing like the guy who's doing your bags? Is that the target of this now? This is crazy. I thought it was MS-13. But they are enabled by this far-right outlets like Benny Johnson and OAN, who say, This is great stuff. Anyways, all right. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk about this new Time cover with Donald Trump on there. Apparently, he's really unhappy about it. It's kind of a surprise. We'll be back.
Let me steal a minute of your time to tell you about the platform I use to run Status. It's called Beehive, and I've got a special offer for readers coming up. But first, here's a little background on why Beehive was right for Status. When I started this newsletter, I needed a platform that could grow with us. Something powerful enough for serious publishers, but still simple enough to build without a large team of engineers or designers.
That's exactly what we found with Beehive. It was built by the same team behind Morning Brew, so they understand what it takes to grow an audience and build a real business around your work. Since launching, two things have made a huge difference. First, our newsletter actually reaches people because the deliverability is outstanding. We know that if there are any issues, Beehive's team is there to help. Second, the paid subscription setup is incredibly easy. This is where you can charge for access to your newsletter. Beehive handles payments, subscriber management, all of it. That lets us stay focused on the journalism while the platform turns our work into a sustainable business.
Whether you're an independent writer or running a larger publication, Beehive gives you everything in one place. A clean editor, a website for your publication, powerful growth tools like referrals and recommendations, and multiple ways to make money from day one. If you're thinking about starting a newsletter or switching platforms, Beehive is offering Status readers 30% off. That's 30% off, guys, for your first 3 months with code STATUS30.
Visit beehive.com/status. That's BEEHIIV.com/status and start building your newsletter today. All right, we're back. Oliver, did you see this Time magazine cover this week? It's got Donald Trump on the cover. It looks like it's a glowing cover story. It declares in all caps his triumph. It lands, you think he's gonna be thrilled with it, right? He loves this. I mean, I think he has these framed in his office. We've seen in the past in his first administration, anytime he's been on the cover of things. Anyways, he's furious about it. He goes off on how it is super bad. The picture, he says, may be the worst of all time. He says, they disappeared my hair, and then they had something floating on top of my head that looked like a floating crown. This picture goes viral. Everybody's cracking up about him. It's looking up, right? It's not the most, it's not the most flattering. People start to zoom in on his neckline, which, has some sort of neck folds in there. A lot of jokes start whipping up, comparing it to like Female Anatomy. Gavin Newsom, the California governor, posted an image of it with like a blur over it as if it's like a graphic image. Trump is furious though. What do you think about this whole thing?
Well, I mean, it's not a flattering photo. I mean, I do see why he's maybe a little bit upset, I guess. I mean, I think he views himself in a different way, and that one did make him look a little older, I will say. It does look like his hair is thinned a little bit, and he looks a little older. So as someone who is so photo obsessed or image obsessed, you can kind of see why he's upset. I will say, traditionally, photos that are shot from that angle, like, upward on a person, are typically done to show them as an imposing, authoritative figure. And I think that's what Time Magazine was actually going for, given the headline associated with the image. So I don't think they were obviously trying to make him look bad. I think they were trying to make him look powerful and triumphant to match the cover. But Donald Trump's obviously very sensitive to the way he looks. I think he's obviously very sensitive to maybe balding, be the right way to say that. And he does look like he has his hairline looks pretty thin there.
Yeah, I mean, he looks older. The hair is an issue. His neckline looks like he's got the whole gobbler situation. It looks like it's like tucked into his
he neatly
neckline,
tucked it in there.
It literally he does not, like, his weight doesn't look good. But I mean, I agree. You post a photo like that because you want to make him look like a visionary, right? Like he's like looking up into the sky with like the bright light casting upon him, almost shining down, almost like he's anointed. I don't know. Maybe they knew ahead of time that this is how he would react, and this is all part of the plan to not make him look overly glowing. Because let's be honest, like, should a news organization be showering praise on an extremely controversial and unpopular president?
I don't know. I think they probably wanted it to look triumphant, and that was the purpose of the photo. And Donald Trump's very sensitive to how he is portrayed in the media, and so we're seeing a totally unhinged response to a photo. I think the number one rule you should learn as a public figure is, generally speaking, you don't control a photo. Some photos you're going to like, some photos you're not going to like. You just got to get over it. I guess this is maybe Donald Trump's way of getting over it, ranting and letting his anger out.
Yeah, this is that reality. It is amazing to watch, though. All right. So, anyways, Zohran Mamdani, the New York City mayoral candidate, very likely the city's next mayor, he did something pretty unusual this week. He also went on Fox News, which you might not expect somebody like himself, who's on the farther left side of the Democratic Party, and is constantly attacked on their air. I mean, not a day goes by when they're not talking about him. In fact, a lot of their primetime hosts seem to use Mamdani as a punching bag to ignore a lot of the abuses of the Trump administration. We don't have to cover this stuff because we've got a huge scandal and controversy. Every time there's now a shooting in New York City, it's Mamdani's fault. He's not even the mayor yet. But violence in the city, Zohran did it. Zohran is the symptom of that problem. Anyways, he goes on their air this week. He does a live, I think it was a live interview. Maybe it was taped. He did an interview, and here's what he said.
President Trump said that you never worked a day in your life. You've worked as an assemblyman, and you've had other positions in the government. But what qualifies you from your life experience to run the largest city in the country?
You know, I want to take this moment because you spoke about President Trump, and he may be watching right now. And I just want to speak directly to the president, which is that I will not be a mayor like Mayor Adams, who will call you to figure out how to stay out of jail. I won't be a disgraced governor like Andrew Cuomo, who will call you to ask how to win this election. I can do those things on my own. I will, however, be a mayor who is ready to speak at any time to lower the cost of living. That's the way that I'm going to lead this city. That's the partnership I want to build, not only with Washington, D.C., but anyone across this country. I think it's important because too often the focus on the needs of working class Americans, working class New Yorkers are put to the side as we talk more and more about the very kinds of corrupt politicians like Andrew Cuomo that delivered us into this kind of crisis.
Pretty remarkable, though, that he recognizes that Fox News is how you speak directly to Donald Trump. Like, do you want to talk to him? You come on this channel. We know the guy's watching all the time.
He did it again later in the interview with Andrew Cuomo and spoke directly into the camera to him, too. It was almost like he was speaking throughout this interview, not only to the Fox News audience, but directly to these audiences of one.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved Martha's question, too, which is, why are you qualified to run the city of New York? Somebody who has been an assemblyman and therefore been in New York politics, understands the city, unlike the current president of the United States, who prior to him running in 2016 had zero political experience, had run multiple businesses that went bankrupt, ran them into the ground, didn't even pay back his debtors. I mean, there's a litany of stories about that. They ever have him on the air and say, do you have any qualifications? I do think it's fascinating that was the question.
Well, there are a lot of these people, too, in the Republican Party now that have no prior experience, and that was celebrated, actually. They're getting rid of the swamp. What happened to, we don't like those swamp creatures. We want someone fresh and new, an outsider to shake things up. I mean, if anything, Zohran should be celebrated on Fox News for that, not berated for, no experience. And so I thought that was quite a line of questioning from Martha as well.
Yeah, I mean, they have clearly, if Martha's not saying it there, she's maybe hinting at it, these concerns from Republicans recognizing that very likely he's going to win, but they've constantly portrayed him as the avatar of like socialism, right? Mm-hmm. He wants to effectively turn New York City into this, I don't even know, it's like dystopian world in which socialism reigns, prices soar through the roof, and homelessness is rampant. They're going to be taking over the bus lines and the subways because he's going to make buses for free. The guy doesn't know what he's doing because he's a socialist. And so it seems like you're getting that. I thought it was really smart of him, though, to take that question and instead pivot off it and turn directly to the camera and say, you know, these other two New York City mayor candidates, I'm not going to be like that because you have them in your pocket, more or less. And I thought that was like politically a smart move for him to take the airwaves and go direct like that.
Yeah, I think he's one of this new, a member of this new class of Democratic politician who's quite effective actually when they go on Fox News, because they defuse and dismantle a lot of the arguments that are used against him on the network. And that's what you saw there throughout the entire interview, was a question that probably wasn't coming necessarily in the best faith, but him taking the question and then hitting it out of the park. And he did that over and over and over again. And it's, very much so why he's likely to be the next mayor. He's very media savvy. He came up via social media. That's how people first learned about him in the city. At least a lot of people did. They saw him on Instagram Reels or TikTok or wherever. And he's not only good in that new media setting, but he's also proving he's very good when it comes to doing traditional media. And he can take those questions all day long and deliver answers that I think tend to appeal to more than just his liberal base, but also to New Yorkers across the spectrum. I don't know if they'll end up switching, but I can imagine, Brit Hume, for instance, after this interview said that, he might be a socialist, but he's a talent. And I think that's telling that even Fox News is recognizing his ability to convey a message.
Yeah, I think it says quite a bit. It also says a lot about what we're in this moment. Like you said there, you see Gavin Newsom, who was pretty deep in terms of the placement and thinking of where 2028, the next presidential election, will be. Now he's really zoomed to the top, in part because he's really taken a more combative approach to bad faith attacks on social media. He's gone directly into the Fox den and talked to Fox News hosts. He did that debate on their air a while ago with Ron DeSantis, which was super weird. But I do think that is maybe a new strategy here that we're seeing play out. And for Zohran, he got a ton of headlines out of that interview, mostly about the way he turned and went directly to Trump on their air. And I think that was really smart.
There's a common theme here too, that these politicians that are succeeding in the media, they also look like they're having some fun, right? Like Gavin Newsom mocking Donald Trump. It's like funny. It's like there's like some humor in it. There's some fun and like life in there. Zohran's campaign is very youthful. Like you can tell he's having fun on the campaign trail. AOC, when she first rose, like you can tell that there's like this like energy that is often not encapsulated by the Democratic Party, which often feels very stiff, very old, very cringe at times. And these new figures that are emerging, they just seem to be having a little bit of fun as they're communicating their message. And I think that's important. And it's a good I think lesson for Democrats or something.
It definitely looks more authentic and less forced. They don't look uncomfortable. Like, oh God, I'm getting an uncomfortable question. How do I deal with this? Sort of like how Pete Hegseth is currently dodging the press at all times. They seem ready to confront it. Like they relish it. So it is a good media strategy for them. Turning to some other news this week, Oliver, you got some incredible exclusive reporting that Olivia Nuzzi, she is the former New York Magazine star who wrote countless cover stories for them, who'd gone quiet for the last year after a scandal erupted in which a relationship between her and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the anti-vaccine crusader who Donald Trump now has tapped unbelievably to run the Health and Human Services Department. She's back now. She has a new job at Vanity Fair, where she's the West Coast editor because she's lived in LA apparently for the last few months. Congratulations to her. She has a book coming out, you report, and it sounds like she's going to be talking about her relationship with RFK. What are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, she's going to have to address it, and I think this is probably where she's going to do it first. At least maybe on the book tour and in the book itself. The book is supposed to come out, to my understanding, later this year. Galleys are floating amongst a small group of readers. And I think this will be her first time addressing the RFK scandal that she got caught up in. since it first happened. When it did happen, when we reported on her relationship with RFK last October, I believe, she put out a statement and she went pretty dark after that. She did not, she was, in LA, she decamped out there. She was, basically living an off the record life. And this will be her first time addressing it. And now she's going to be talking about RFK not as a failed presidential candidate, but as the Health and Human Services Secretary who is holding a key government position. So it will be very interesting to see what she has to say. RFK, of course, had denied a relationship, an inappropriate relationship with her. And so I think her even just coming out and acknowledging that there was this relationship, to some extent, like he has faced no consequences for this behavior. And I wonder now, as a government official, if he'll actually get questions about, being unfaithful to his wife, Cheryl Hines, who is the Curb Your Enthusiasm star.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll continue to deny, right? At this point, unless there's some sort of concrete evidence that comes out, he's going to continue to deny and make it sound like, either she's crazy or that the media has been lying.
I'm sure she has concrete evidence of this relationship, right? And the question is, does she choose to release it? Does she hold on to it and keep it, hidden? There are higher stakes now that that he is in government, in a key position of government, and that she's now the West Coast editor for Vanity Fair. So if Vanity Fair is sitting on information like that, I think there would be questions posed to them. So it will be interesting to see how she addresses this in her book and how forthcoming I think she is about that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, I do think she has a journalistic duty in many ways. If she has this kind of information and reporting about a current government official in a very important role, one that's been already has upended our whole way that the government handles health issues, vaccines, putting out this information recently claiming that it's Tylenol that's responsible for autism in pregnant women. Like, of course, there's no evidence behind that. It's likely junk, but this is like what RFK has long trafficked in. If she has information, this would be a great place for her to do it. I also think, does anybody want to buy an Olivia Nuzzi book in the year 2025? Why would anybody want? She's not writing the coattails of a successful cover story reporter from New York Magazine anymore. She's now been in a very quiet place for a year. She's coming back from that. I think the one thing people would be interested in is if she talks about this relationship. What else? I mean, otherwise it's like, she's going to report on, in this book, her history of covering Washington, snooze.
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't be so dismissive of that. I think she's someone who was really integral to the Washington scene, lived the Washington scene, probably has a lot of untold tales about covering Donald Trump and the MAGA movement. And it's possible that she could dish some of that stuff out. It's possible that she'll do that in her book. She's moved to LA. She's now the West Coast editor. I don't know if that means she's no longer going to be covering politics, but that's certainly what it sounds like. And so this could be, emptying out her reporter's notebook on Trump's Washington, which would be, I think, quite interesting to a fair amount of people. And she's also a talented writer. So, she could spin up a nice story here, or various stories in this book. So I wouldn't rule that out either. But I think what people are going to be looking for is this RFK section, and people will be control Fing that right when the book comes out.
Oh, definitely. I feel like every reporter in Washington is going to be absolutely diving to read this thing. They're going to be it's
coming out during the holidays, so perhaps that's on the gift list for some people.
Great Christmas gift this year. All right. Well, that's it for us this week. Oliver, it's been another great one. We'll catch you next week. Thank you for listening to Powerlines, a presentation of Status. And a special thank you to Beehive for sponsoring this episode. The show is produced by Matt Havia and Antonio Enriquez in association with In the Arena Studios. Please like, share, and subscribe to Powerlines on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen. and watch full episodes and clips on our YouTube page at Status.